Hello, I'm Dipika Mukherjee, the author of Shambala Junction, which I'm going to share with you today. I'm a writer and a sociolinguist, and I live in Chicago right now, but I also consider Kuala Lumpur and New Delhi home. I have been writing for many years. I actually got my first poem published in a newspaper when I was about 11 years old. And lately I've been writing a lot of novels as well as poetry. And today what I'm going to talk about is Shambala Junction, which is my second novel. My first novel is titled Ode to Broken Things, and it is based on current Malaysian sociopolitics. Shambala Junction is a very different story. It's a story that's set in India, and it starts in the voice of Iris, who is a young Indian American woman who travels on a train from Calcutta to New Delhi, and she steps off in Shambala Junction. Now, this stepping off at the wrong station is going to change her life, but Iris does not know that yet. And one of the basic things about writing a novel is to put your character in as much of distress as you can, so the story becomes interesting for the readers. So this is what I've done with Iris. She gets lost and she meets a doll seller who is also going to be crucial to her redemption. So I'm going to read from chapter 1, since this is Iris's story, and it is in the voice of Iris, and she actually sees the doll story, Aman, for the first time in this part. The library is now open. Next to the water vendor was a doll seller, his upper body covered in a threadbare singlet with 2 dark semicircles around his armpits. He had an array of colorful wooden dolls spread out in front of him on a pushcart. There were dolls with turbans and flared coats, playing flutes and dholaks. There were men riding horses with colorful stirrups and dazzling sword sheaths. There were dancers dancing with the left leg slightly on tiptoe, caught in mid-swirl in the disarray of flouncing skirts. Iris was enchanted. She had once owned a dancing doll just like that one, a beloved painted wooden thing with a crack in the veiled head, a gift from someone unremembered in her childhood. She wanted some water as much as she wanted to hop off and buy a doll. It would be so cool to find the unblemished twin of the one in her closet in Ohio. The air outside was refreshingly cool. The doors on both sides of the carriage were open. Immediately, the smell of hot puris fluffing into golden balls assaulted her nose. Even at this time of night, the puriwala was on the platform, and he had a small line of buyers as he deftly spooned a liquidy potato curry into a leaf bowl, and his helper covered it with 2 piping hot puris. The waiting buyer grasped the package and juggled it nimbly as the heat scorched his hands. The train conductor was filling up a red water bottle from the tap. The Japanese tourists were finally moving after loading all their suitcases and backpacks into a 2-wheeled luggage barrow. The train felt solidly still as Iris walked towards the bottles of water. For all she knew, they could be there for another half an hour. The journey so far had been erratic, with stops and starts in the most unlikely of places. She looked back nervously at the large Victorian station clock, which pointed to 2:41 in the morning. But the train was totally immobile, as if it too were asleep. As she headed for the drink stall, she checked for the money pouch attached to her belt and took out a single frayed note. The cool water trickled deliciously down her throat. She had gulped the entire contents down and was tossing the bottle into a bin when "Chai garam!" a nasal voice sounded near her waist, and a hand simultaneously thrust a small bowl of hot tea in her direction. The tea splashed on her hand and made her feel instantly gummy, and she suppressed the instinct to reach for her disinfecting wipes. She scrabbled in her money belt for some change, unwilling to deny the little boy with the dirty towel around her neck his due, even though she disliked milky chai. The boy took the money as he stared at her, eyes assessing her clothes, her breasts, and then her hair. And then someone shouted, "Chai wala!" And he left immediately, the aluminium kettle in his hand, dribbling a line of tea on the platform towards his new customer. Tea in hand, Iris wandered towards the doll seller, hesitantly looking back after a few steps. She walked a little further, sipping the hot tea slowly, blowing her breath into the little opening. As she gulped down the last dregs of liquid, she saw the boy pocketing the change from another customer further down, and she ran along the platform to return the little clay bowl. "Here," she said. "Thank you. Good cha. Acha." The boy looked at her breasts, outlined through her tight t-shirt, and grinned, ignoring the extended bowl. "Here," Iris tried again, "your cup." The boy looked puzzled, then seeing what was in her hand, took the cup, lingering on her fingers a little longer than was necessary, and smashed it against the railway tracks. "Why did you?" Iris looked at the shattered shards in dismay. Then she noticed that many such little clay bowls lay broken along the rails. Eco-friendly, she realized, terracotta to mud, and wondered how to ask the chaiwala for a souvenir cup to show off back home in Ohio. She followed the boy, who had walked further down the platform and was pouring fresh tea into his aluminium teapot from the frothing saucepan. Two men lounging by a pillar chortled, "Hello, dear! Hello, darling!" in her direction, but she walked resolutely on and tapped the boy's shoulder gently. That was when she sensed a slight rumble and heard the deep sigh of air expelled from a lumbering machine. As she whirled around, she could see the train starting to move away. She saw the other tea drinker dash his half-drunk cup against the rails, and another one further up the line do the same, and both swiftly hopped onto the train. Surely the whistle should have blown or something. Iris's feet remained glued to the concrete of the filthy platform as panic coursed through her blood. The tea boy poked her waist sharply. "Bhago!" he urged, waving both his hands towards the train as if shooing her there. Her feet started to move, but although she began to jog along the platform, she just couldn't run fast enough. She slid on something slimy and careered into a group of Japanese tourists who stood blocking her dash for the train. Her ankle exploded in pain. "Bhago!" the boy shouted, keeping pace with her, a lot more urgently this time, and the people around her all gesticulating for her to move more quickly and shouting encouragement in Hindi. As she continued to run along the platform, the pain in her ankle grew more acute, and her chest was exploding with tears and blurring her vision of the departing train. She didn't see the raised edge of the luggage trolley. Instead, her right toe stubbed on something hard, and then it was a blur as she fell into the doll seller's stand, her leg flailing in the air while her hands reached for the ground. There was a crash as the array of wooden dolls tumbled to the ground and smashed. Iris raised her head very, very slowly to survey the damage. There were beheaded dolls and limbless animals everywhere. The doll seller was shouting obscenities she barely understood. Iris felt herself trembling. Anyone could see that she hadn't deliberately destroyed the man's stand, but a couple of bystanders kicked at the mangled toy limbs while other vendors surrounded the doll seller, sympathizing with one of their own. She closed her eyes to blot out the sight and the sound and the smells, but it just didn't help. It was all too awful. And where was Danish when she needed him? So that is an excerpt from the first chapter, and to read the whole book, you will have to go to any leading Malaysian bookstore or on Amazon.com to get this book. And I hope you will enjoy it very much. You can also read more about this book at www.dipikamukherjee.com or on Amazon.com. And I look forward to hearing any feedback you have.